What's good, Cap Nation, fellow GPA members, enjoyers, coaches, and moderators, and everyone else? Welcome back to the GPA Season 1, Week 8 watch party, hosted by yours truly, the coach of the Detroit Red Wingles, who are stepping in this season just to fill in a couple of spots here at the last couple battles of the week. So, yeah, we are looking at Week 8, which determines who is the championships now. Obviously, we've already had playoffs go because we are a week behind. It is just the upload schedule and the content schedule of this stuff. So we are just a bit behind what's going on here. So hopefully your team's made it in. But if you haven't been paying attention and you missed all the stuff, please check it out. And we can relive some of these great matches that have happened this week. As I said, there's a lot of really important matches this week, but let's take a look first at our standings to see who is in and who is out already. King Kryptonite, the Phoenix Sun Currens, Chipotle Choodle, and Thread are at 6-1, which is more than enough points to make it in to the league. As I said, 4 is your threshold, 6 is your threshold to guarantee getting in this league specifically. 5 actually would do it for that we see. Yeah, 5 is going to do it. So they already accomplished that. They're in. And then Banzai, Muskrat, and the Boston Celebes eke away in. Even with a loss this week, they would have to, in losing 6 differential, an 0-6 loss, would still put them at 4-4 and positive, which is more than these teams that are trying to fight to get in. So that pretty much secures them. Beans is probably also in. So the top 4 teams are probably in this week. Everyone else is kind of fighting to either get in or to make sure they don't drop out. So that is where we're at this week. We've lined up some important matches, as we've talked about here. So you can only see the teams on the left. Let's see if you can see the teams on the right. So the Untitled Archon team and the Phoenix Sun Currents have a big matchup this week. That one matters. The Detroit Red Wingles and the West Palm Lugias, which actually is the Richmond Rillaboom's coached by Hamby G. 2 replacement teams this week is big because the winner of that match could determine who gets that final slot. The Pristine Primarinas and the Kansas City Torrent are big because a win for the Torrent means they are in. A loss definitely means they're out. So you're playing for your life here in Week 8. And then the Cleveland Warrior and the Good Lights Cresselia, another team that has a chance to get in and out. It would have to be a 6-0 in the right conditions for Cresselia to get in. But it is what it is. So let's take a look at our matchups. I'm doing them in order of playing, so we'll address the ins and outs as we get through the leagues. First up is Scallop Warrior, which is our Orange County Oshawotts and our Golden Glaceons at the bottom here. A match that is not really that important. Scallop's playing for a win, and I forget what the other team was. The Golden Glaceons, Wastecar is basically in. So really it's only positioning there for Wastecar. Although Scallop can play spoiler and potentially, if gets a 6-0, does put the Golden Glaceons tied with the Richmond Rillabooms at -3, and that could put them out of playoffs as well, depending on seeding and those kinds of things. So it's a matchup that kind of matters, but not really too much. I mean, the Glaceons are probably in anyway, but let's take a look at these teams. So we have Scowls Orange County Oshawotts, which is the Fluttermane team that has yet to see a victory this season. We have Terra Verizion, Terra Cryogonal, both of which are great Terra captains. I do think Verizion is great, and I know a lot of people have been knocking me this season. It's like, Chaos has been swearing by this Verizion. It hasn't done anything. Well, it has to get the right situation. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it can be a threat if you're not ready for it. So you have to prepare for it. Fluttermane's the bread and butter of this team. Gliscor is a defensive core as well. King Gambit has there to be a priority user, as well as Raging Bolt. And then you have more of a defensive team in the back there with Toxapex and Cryogonal, but some offensive options with Quackleval that's probably meant to be more of a designated sweeper here moving forward. And then it's Wastecar. I always get the name wrong. They're right next to each other. You can't see the top, but Wastecar is the Chien Pao team with Iron Moth, Walking Wake, and Arboliva, which is Terra, which is what you probably can't see, and everything else is below the docks there. But this is my Our Sun team this week, and a very interesting week it has, because that is two Pokemon on the other side that really do want to benefit from the sun. And if you rock Photosynthesis with like Choice Scarf or Choice Specs into either of those, Raging Bolt and Fluttermane can and will pop off. So probably not expecting to see sun this week. If I'm Wastecar, I'm definitely bringing Chien Pao to try to do something against Fluttermane, and also Raging Bolt on that side. Otherwise, you have to find your matchup, your special defensive matchup into the Fluttermane. And I'm not really sure what that is potentially outside of Arboliva, especially a Terra. I don't know. You can't go Terra Steel because of Mystical Fire. A Terra Arboliva could go crazy this week. A very specially defensive Colossal could stop Fluttermane as well. I definitely like that. So I think you bring those Terra options, especially Arboliva. Maybe you go Terra Grass this week. Maybe you run Terra Ghost or Terra Fairy to try to deal with Quaquaval and its setup shenanigans. But Arboliva really should be able to take that on pretty nicely. That would be the only thing you want Sun for this week, is to stop Quaquaval, but I don't think it's that important. So I would go Chien Pao, Arboliva with Terra Fairy, probably Colossal, and I would not Terra my Colossal this week, barring Terra Flying or Terra Water or something like that to stop the damage from Gliscor. That would be my only thing, but Chien Pao counters that Gliscor, so I don't expect to see Gliscor this week, so probably not even worried about it too much. But I'm bringing Chien Pao, I'm bringing Arboliva, I'm bringing Colossal, and then the rest of your team really is what you want to see. What do you want to bring into this matchup? So I think Donphan actually comes this week as a Rapid Spinner. I think you need that. It's also a great check to Raging Bolt if you run Assault Vest, which I think is a great option for this team this week. I like Walking Wake as well, especially if you're like a Photosynthesis setup set. If you have a way to get your boost out there, I like that for this team as well. Slitherwing and Iron Moth both can do different things. I like Iron Moth maybe a little bit more to put pressure on the Fluttermane, and maybe cause that Gliscor to come anyway. And Jirachi, I don't feel like comes this week. So I like that. I'm going to say Chien Pao, Iron Moth, Walking Wake, Donphan, Colossal, and Arboliva would be the team I would expect to bring this week if I'm Wastecar, just to get enough pivots to set up rocks, to have a defensive core to deal with that Fluttermane and Raging Bolt on the special side. And then you have answers to Quaquaval with something like Arboliva or something like that. So I think you have your answers there. Defensively to deal with Scal's team. On Scal's side, again, as I said, Gliscor doesn't have a great matchup this week because of the worry of Chien Pao, which is probably going to come. Now, if you really expect Iron Moth to be your problem, which I just said it's a really good defensive option for this team, which is probably why they're paired together, you might bring it to this match. Although I think you probably could get away with running Heatran and not worrying about it. So I'm going to say a defensive Heatran variant meant to deal with Iron Moth, Chien Pao, which would just be ground and fire stabs, specially most likely. Maybe physically if you want to counter for Quiver Dance, but a defensive Heatran. I like Quaquaval. It's got a good matchup outside of the sun, especially as a setup sweeper, and I think that's what Scal likes. So I would expect to see Quaquaval specifically as a Rapid Spinner as well on this team too. Fluttermane comes, it's your main Pokemon, you bring it. I don't admit that it has a great matchup this week outside of, Walking Wake. Chien Pao's a little risky, especially with Sucker Punch, but if you're like Colberberry, I could see it working. So I like Fluttermane this week, especially if the sun does come. That is a great way to boost Photosynthesis. I think also for the same reason you bring Raging Bolt as a great way to maybe shut down a Choice Scarf Walking Wake in the back, and some of these other things, especially with Thunderclap. So I like that. I think those three come. The rest of your team is kind of up to you. Those four come, rather. The rest of your team's up to you. I don't really expect to see a lot of hazards, so maybe I try to run the Terra Virizion as a way to catch Walking Wake, as the way to maybe I run Terra Fighting to deal with Chien Pao. I like those options. And then on the other side, I think, honestly, I would bring... I don't like any of these. I just don't like the team, honestly, at this point. I might say King Gambit just as another way to deal with Chien Pao. Chople Berry could be great into something like Slitherwing. I don't know. It's kind of up to you what you want to pick, but let's see what Scout decided to bring. The Gliscor Toxic Orb set does come this week against Better Judgment because, as I said, I don't think it has a great matchup, but it's here. What are we going to do about it? It is more offensive, which I think has been the problem with this, is very speedy and very offensive, especially when you could have used the defensive stuff to deal with it, but potentially that's more of a pivot deterrent. Toxic Orb does block status conditions, which is great, so that can be a nice easy free switch in. Otherwise, pretty standard set, although dual wing beat over a poison stab is kind of crazy. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's 4 attack, poison. Yeah, it's pretty standard. Then we have the Lumberry Quackball, which we saw last week with Close Combat, Aqua Step, Taunt, and U-Turn. That's meant to block Will-O-Wisp and or Thunder Wave. And I'm not remembering what the Thunder Wave, probably more Will-O-Wisp from like Ninetales or something along those lines. Thunder Wave Rotom too. It's a good check, I guess, for both of those mons if you expect them. Otherwise, it's a pretty standard set with a little bit more defensive bulk than you would imagine. Normally, that's probably as a way to deal with Chien Pao if I had to take a guess. The Heatran comes, as I said, if you run dual stab and Earth Power, you're pretty set. That's probably designated lead. I like the idea of Chople Berry. I'm not sure if it's going to come into effect too much because the only real issue there would be Slitherwing. I do like Stealth Rocks on it though, so I give it that as a kind of defensive mixed attack option. Maybe more, I would probably proc it more defensive and not worry so much about your speed, but I'm hoping that 148 is calced into something or other. We have a Choice Specs Fluttermane with Photosynthesis. Again, this will be busted in the sun. However, it is special attack boosted and not speed boosted and not max speed, which means Chien Pao probably outspeeds it and one-shots it without Sucker Punch, which maybe I would reconsider that build. I definitely would reconsider that build. I mean, if that's what you're going to be your big threat, then you got to figure that out. And I understand you want a little bit more of the special defense, but a physical attacker just bops you, and that is Fluttermane's weak point. We have a Terra Ground Cryogonal this week with heavy duty boots, meant to be the spinner. Did we see Rapid Spin on? We did not see Rapid Spin on Quackball, so this is our Rapid Spin option this week. Terra Ground to mitigate the fire core that could be coming out. And it's actually a pretty good Terra because it does stop Arboliva as well. Because it'll question it with definitely an ice move, but very offensive. We'll see if it can do some work. And at the bottom, you don't see, but it is Photosynthesis, Yache Berry, Raging Bolt as an option to deal with Chien Pao. 124 defense, 2 max special attack, and 132 speed. And it's got a pivoting option. That is its stab move. So there is no Thunderclap, which I definitely would consider. A Taunt has been thrown around on this team a couple times, so expecting like Swords Dance or Quiver Dance or something could be an option against things that are gonna outspeed. So I'm not liking the sets just because they're not built to be a taunter, in my opinion. And I definitely think Thunderclap is massive this week. As I said, it is a great way to revenge something like Chien Pao, something like Walking Wake. And you don't have that option, so I think that's really going to bite him in the butt. But let's see what Waste Car brings, so we can see how this team fares. So we see the Walking Wake, we see Jirachi, Slitherwing, Arboliva, the Donphan, and of course Chien Pao. So we're missing a few of those things. The no sun mode is probably the best bet, especially because both, again, I would be bringing Fluttermane and Raging Bolt this week, seeing that it's a sun team. We have a Terra Ground Cryogonal, we have a Terra Ice Arboliva, which is another good Terra type for it. Not really sure if that's great or not, simply because the coverage is there for this entire team to deal with it. With Terra Ice, I definitely think Terra Fairy was a good option. particularly as you don't have another fairy type on the team, and that really could stuff the Raging Bolt. It also removes your fighting weakness from the Quackle, so yeah, it's very interesting to me. I think the way I've seen this league played, I would imagine it's a Slitherwing lead. Sorry, a Slitherwing? Yeah, a Slitherwing lead with U-turn or something like that, and I would imagine that we're not trying to get rocks up immediately, so it's either Raging Bolt or Gliscor coming in first from Scal this week. We'll see what it is. It is the Fluttermane going full offensive, and we do see Slitherwing for the pivot, which it does show that it's faster, so I'm not sure if that's scarfed or not, but it has to be scarfed. Because we know that Fluttermane has a little bit of speed investment, so that is a scarfed Slitherwing. And a great Shadow Ball to catch to the Jirachi, but fearing an offensive Jirachi, we're switching. You saw the scarf damage, so they know that Fluttermane is Specs. So we see that damage, and we make the appropriate switch to our normal type, which actually is great to keep our Believer as Terra Normal to tank those hits, and maybe Terra Normal is a good option this week. I'm not Terra Normal, regular Normal, not evolving, not Terraing it, is good this week for its options there. Flame Orb, I'm sorry, we see Toxic Orb proc, we're just going to see some switching again. It just repositioning is the way of Draft League. And there's the Strength Sap, which is actually a really good strategy for our Believer if it can work correctly. But we're expecting a switch, and we're making good predictions into Donphan. This is anticipating, I'm assuming, SmackDown and or... it was definitely predicting SmackDown. Although the Ice Shard is going to bring Gyro down and basically get you a free trade. Great tech though, unfortunately it didn't work out and you traded your Donphan, but you are allowing your Chien Pao to come in and set up, and there is the fighting coverage that you wanted to scout for if you're Heatran. There's the Draco that you wish you had a fairy type for. I'm honestly surprised it wasn't a switch into Jirachi there. As we see Taunt to shut down our Believer, and then we're going to see a Volt switch as probably a Giga Drain comes out, and we are expecting, I don't know if the ground type move was expected there. What was it? I mean, it was Raging Bolt. So good use of your ability there to deal with the ground type coverage. But I'm surprised, honestly, it wasn't a switch. And now we get to see a free recover over to our Cryogonal, and we sack Jirachi to get back into Chien Pao to set up again, where we are waiting for Terra Blast to do half to this thing. Although that is finally the end of Cryogonal. That is the end of Raging Bolt. I'm wondering if they assumed that Yachi Berry could live. That also could have been a miscalc, forgetting that you had damage on your Pokemon, although it shows you your damage. But Chien Pao is just clean to set up 3 Pokemon here in a row. The Choppa Berry, does it stop +2? It does. And that will be the end of Chien Pao, but really getting Race Car back into this game, because you were down 6-4 and then you just made the game 3-3 essentially, because Heatran's just going to go down here. So that's a great use of your first overall pick to get yourself back into the game, because now we have a full HP. We have 3 mons at full HP. You have destroyed Scal's defensive core while you still have your defensive pieces, and you're letting Walking Wake win this game in the back. So the real question is, how do you beat Fluttermane? And that's what we want to see here. How do you beat Fluttermane? And I'm not sure we have an answer for that, honestly. We have Harvest Citrus Berry, which is going to proc. It's a little too late, and Arbo's going to have to go down. There is just not an answer here for Fluttermane unless it is knockoff right here, and it probably was, but it is not. It's predicted to go Earthquake, and you are showing your choice Scarfed again. And honestly, that drop of an item was great. The dual wing beat is crazier, and so now it's all Scal's game to lose at this point. You have Walking Wake that is choice Spect into Surf, and it just needs a little bit of speed on this Fluttermane to win. And Scal actually picks up his first win of the season. GG's to Scal. on a strategy that I was kind of concerned about going in, but I do think that Wasteguard didn't build the best team that he possibly could this week. Maybe playing it a little bit safer to keep in the game, but that's neither here nor there. And, you know, at -3, at 4-4, you're on the cusp. And I bet Wasteguard wanted to win, but that really, the team he brought definitely helped the differential. Unfortunately, there was no way to stop Fluttermane in the back. And honestly, I don't think there was any way to stop Fluttermane up front anyway with the team that was brought. Potentially Jirachi was the answer, but it was used way too free and easy there, I think, early on, if that was your answer to it. But good match nonetheless. As I said, I just wanted to see what these teams were, just to look. And yeah, I'm not seeing a real clear answer to Fluttermane besides maybe Arboliva. And that is kind of a problem. If Chien Pao was your answer, it needed to not pop off, but I understand it was in and you were trying it, so it's what it is. All right, so next up is my battle versus Hammy. Let's talk about my team because, well, let's talk about what Hammy's going to be bringing, or what Hammy could bring. And then we'll look at my team. So I'm running the Sand. In the bottom there is Scyther, Terra Decidui, Hisuian form, and Quillfish on the bottom. And then Hammy has got this Goldango team here, which is a really great core, honestly, which works well for him. And at the bottom of it, you can see Infernape. So also is Terra Diancie and Terra Diancie and Ditto. You can count for Ditto, but you really just have to let it happen. So I didn't expect that this week. Looking at the team, Enamorus could go off if it's a defensive enough Enamorus to deal with Greninja, especially being like the contrary set with Superpower. That really goes hard into this team, which is a good option. I like Como for the same reasons. Body Press goes hard into this team. Jolteon, I think, is a big one because of the flipping around. Actually, let me just look at my notes to see what I predicted and what I would have wagered would come through. Some sort of offensive Infernape is massive. A physical special dance set, which means Nasty Plot and or Bulk Up or Swords Dance could go crazy with Infernape, or Scarf to do damage, get in, get out. The Tinglu is coming as a defensive pivot option, as well as a phaser, which can cause problems for my team that, especially if rocks or something is up, my team doesn't really like that too well. And then Ogerpon as a wall breaker pivot is what I would have assumed would have come. I don't remember what did come, but what was not on my list that did show up was this Terra Diancie, which I was surprised to see Diancie over Jolteon in this situation, but it is what it is, and that was the Terra option choice of his choosing there. So here's my team. I'm bringing my Excadrill this week with max attack, a little bit less than max speed, and then 60 in special defense to eat hits a little bit more. I have calced it to outspeed Scarfed. I think Scarfed and Enamorus or Scarf. No, it's calced to beat Scarfed and Infernape in the Sand. So that was the plan there. A Life Orb Sand Rush, a standard Sand Rush. Excadrill sent with Dual Stab, Swords Dance for setup, and Stealth Rock, because if I had a turn, I would just throw that out there to try to get something. Mainly, it's here to beat Jolteon, which I thought was going to be a big problem, although it didn't show up. But it also deals with Infernape in the Sand, and Enamorus in the Sand, Goldango as long as it's not Air Balloon or Scarfed, Diancie in the right situations, Tinglu at +2, and Slowbro at +2. So I really needed that +2 so Life Orb damage to deal a lot into these more defensive options of the team. Of course, if I'm bringing Excadrill, I have to bring T-Tar. This time it's an Assault Vest T-Tar, specifically meant to deal with Enamorus. If you don't know, in the Sand, rock types get a special defense boost, which actually is really powerful. And I think I used that last week with Scal and the Fluttermane. So we saw that last week. But Earthquake, Knockoff, Rock Slide, and Body Press, of course, have to be max 4 attacks this week. So Dual Stab and two really good coverage options. I'm max HP to try to live as much as possible, and I'm defensive and specially defensive to take some hits. I wanted to be able to take both the physical and special side depending on what these Pokemon wanted to tear into or what was brought this week. But T-Tar is again another Jolteon encounter. It's meant to deal with Enamorus, especially the contrary Super Power set, Goldango as well. But it can take on a lot of things in the right situations. We get to bring Scyther this week. As I said, like, I'm picking up a team that doesn't have a good shot at playoffs anyway. But I wanted to try a Terra Scyther this week. Not a Terra Scyther. I wanted to try my Scyther out this week. So I'm running Muscle Band to give a little bit more power to get Scyther some KOs. Unfortunately, 110 attack is kind of bad for one-shotting things. So even super effectively. So was trying to buff that a little bit. I am max attack, max speed to do some damage. And of course, Adamant with the Muscle Band and Technician to do damage, which boost all of my attacks except for U-Turn. And U-Turn is there for pivoting options, as Scyther is one of my faster things on the team and outspeeds everything below Enamorus. So it can do some pivoting on the defensive things that are going to switch in to it to do some damage. But Scyther's main goal here is to deal with Ditto if it shows up. Is to deal with Como-O, especially one that would try to set up in its face or a substitute variant. And if I can outspeed Ogerpon and Infernape, it does beat there. With Rocks, it's a good matchup into Jolteon. And also a good matchup into Infernape. Did I have Terra Scyther? I did not have Terra Scyther. For a second, I thought I calced for it, and I did not. So, that is the Scyther. Up next is the Zapdos, which I wanted to use, but I haven't got a chance to. Fun fact, Hurricane is not lowered in Sand, it's only lowered in Sun, so I decided to bring an all-out offensive Zapdos this week with max defensive max HP almost, instead of max attack, but it's a defensive all-out Zapdos. Which is pretty standard. I think the only difference is I'm running U-Turn instead of Volt Switch this week because there was a ground type on this team, a big ground type called Ting-Lu, which was 100% coming. So I wanted to be able to switch out in front of it and not get caught in. Rocky Helmet is there for the defensive options to help deal with Infernape, which is going to be a big problem, especially if it's physical. To deal with Ogerpon as well and Como-O. So all the physical options here don't really want to go 1v1 with Zapdos, which I thought was a great way for me to really make them be punished, especially with the turning options in Stealth Rocks, with Rocky Helmets rather, sorry, there. Stealth Rocks was again here on Excadrill. It's a last-ditch effort, and I talked about it with Scyther. If for some reason like Excadrill couldn't do the work, I wanted to throw out Stealth Rocks, or if Excadrill got in early and I didn't want to send it at that point in time, I could fire Stealth Rocks off to kind of get some breaks later on. Here's actually my big fun piece this week, which is the Decidueye, the Terra Decidueye. I love Terra Decidueye. I think it's great, and the typing is really good too, despite its 4x weakness. I'm scrapped overs. Wow, I'm scrappy leftovers this week with a little bit of defensive investment, a lot of special defense investment, and most of my investment into attack. I have triple arrows, which is a great move, a great stab move, which has a chance to either crit, has a high crit chance, has a 50% chance to lower the target's defense one stage, or a 30% chance to flinch, which the flinch isn't going to really matter too much with the speed, because I'm not running a lot of speed, but it could come in handy with something like Ting-Lu, which is why it's there. I have Brave Bird for coverage. There is a potential that we need to use Brave Bird into a Infernape switch, so that is why Brave Bird is there. I have Leaf Blade as well as Stab, and then I have Roost as a way to heal up. I wanted to bring Scrappy this week, mostly because I don't like the other ability because it's Overgrowth, but Scrappy also helps me with Goldango in case it wants to switch in, thinking it can live something. Triple Arrows really stuffs it at that point in time, so the Terra Decidueye is there. I'm bringing Terra Fighting this week for an extra boost to Triple Arrows. Said it's more offensive than a defensive Terra, but it's still here. And then last but not least is Hyper Voice or Crocolore this week, which is a pretty standard set for me with Eviolite and Unaware, Flamethrower, Terra Blast, Will-O-Wisp, Sock Off. There's not much to say about it. Although I am Terra Fairy this week, meant to help deal with like Infernape if I need to do that, meant to stop Diancie if it wants to use rock moves against me. Really meant to deal with the setup sweepers and those two. However, it's not a great counter into Diancie, which unfortunately is a problem. It was hard to pick, so I picked Fairy. And I think about it, I could have done Fairy with Clefable. I just decided to go Crocalor for whatever reason. I think the burn enticed me a little bit more this week, to stuff some other things in case I had to switch, but and then it's a standard Crocalor set with some mixed defensive and EVs and IVs and stuff. So you get what you get, and that's that. So let's take a look at the match here. Of course, you can see Hamy's team. I'm going to watch it from my perspective just because it's my team. So this would be how I would be seeing it, and I wanted you guys to see that too. It's Terra Fairy, Terra Fighting, Terra Fairies, Diancie, Terra Fighting, Infernape. Everything else is non-Terra, which is a little confusing when you look at his chart, because none of the Pokemon look like they have Terra, but having to be reminded that there were 2 Terras in this is a big part of the play, and I don't know if that is something I remembered or not while doing this battle or not. Also, if you're wondering where my video is on this, I'm not releasing videos. As I said last week, I'm not releasing videos because I joined last 2 weeks of the season with really no chance of getting into playoffs, so I wasn't gonna make 2 videos and be like, yeah, we're done, cool. So that was that. But we see Diancie, we see Tinglu, we see Enamorus, Ogerpon, the grass one, which I don't remember what it is at this point, Como and Infernape. As I said, the fighting stab goes crazy into this team, especially with all its weaknesses. Thinking back, I might have wanted to run Houndstone this week, but and I really should have, because it would have done a lot better, I think, than the Scyther or something like that. But I wanted Scyther specifically to deal with Ogerpon, Jolteon, and Como and Infernape in the right situation. So it's kind of what it was. It's just choices. If I remember my lead, I think it was Scyther to try to pivot out, and I think theirs was Ogerpon, but I don't remember. It's Como. So Como was Zapdos. Sorry, it was Zapdos. The reason I went Zapdos is I wanted to see if the Tinglu would show up first. Also, I expected that the things that would want to start wouldn't want to see Zapdos on the field. So it kind of it forces Enamorus out, it forces Infernape out, it forces Ogerpon out. That was kind of the point. It doesn't really force this out. It could, but that is the choice we have to make. And Hammy and I have played a couple of times, and it's always a really good battle. So I had to really predict him, and he had to predict me. So I think we both went for a prediction here. I stay in Hurricane, I think, and he stays in and Body Presses or something. But a Citrus Berry set is kind of cool. We do see Sub come out, which is cool also. It was probably a sub Iron Defense Body Press set, would be my guess. But this is also why Scyther works really well, because Dual Wing Beat comes into play here to break the sub and then KO on the other side. So Scyther actually was a great option this week, and that was crazy. And as we can see here, like, I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do there, and Hurricane was a choice. It was definitely a choice. So the Diancie comes in to force Scyther out, which brings in Tinglu. There's a U-turn though, because I'm not super afraid of Diancie yet, and I wanted to get in my counter to Tinglu, which is Decidueye. Here again is another part where we have to predict, and that's why Decidueye is interesting too. Both of Decidueye stabs are resisted by Enamorus, but Brave Bird is not, and that's another option where Brave Bird could come in. I think do about 50%, but it's like, do you want to take that recoil or not right now? So we just triple arrows. I make the middle ground play to do some. I could get a defense drop there. I could get a crit. Like, a lot of things could happen there, but again, we have to switch into my counter for this, which just gets earth powered in the face. And my big problem here is I go for a switch into Zapdos, and I regret this play a lot. I think it was my biggest mistake in this battle, and I've thought about it a lot since this battle, because I just stay there. I just Terra there. And I do not take the damage from Enamorus. I get the slack off back. I'm in a good position to do a lot of damage there, and I can't even burn or something predicting a switch here. But I switch out, and that's basically Crocalor gone, because it's not going to get in unless it gets in for free. Despite the fact that it is Eviolite, it's not defensive enough to really switch in multiple times and take hits. So it's kind of meant to sit there and do what it needs to do. So we see Zapdos against Ting-Lu again, and again the question is, do you Hurricane, do you U-turn? I'm just going to U-turn. I've showed that Decidueye is my answer twice now, but Stealth Rocks is now on the field, and that is a really bad problem for me to have. So that is a really bad problem for me to have, because I'd have no way to get rid of those, and Scyther is not going to like that, and Crocalor is not going to like that, and Zapdos isn't going to like that. So that really limits Crocalor coming back in and Scyther coming back in. So Rock's really good into this team as well, and not something I noticed here. I wanted to point out the Brave Bird. I mentioned that a couple turns ago. That's what Brave Bird can do. 65% to an Amorous. Again, if I was catching it, great. If I caught the Ting-Lu, it wasn't that bad, because the worst case scenario, I'm going to get Whirlwinded out. So I wanted to do damage, and that is going to put a lot of pressure on an Amorous to really do something here. But unfortunately, that forces me to go T-Tar, which can eat the hits and does get the boost. As we were talking, the terrain, the sand, really keeps us alive. So T-Tar's coming in. I knew it was Scarfed at that point. And the defense was able to hold up enough. Again, I could have gone Terra here. I have all my Terra captains this week. I could have gone Terra here to avoid CC, but at this point I was cooked. So, as I said in the chat, if you didn't read it, that's GG, because my season officially over right there. The only way I get in the playoffs is if I 6-0 Hammy. And a lot of other things happen. So my season is done here, and I stopped playing like it matters, and making some really dumb plays, including this one, which is going into Excadrill. The really cool part about what we have here is Focus Sash Excadrill is great, and probably their main concern with getting rocks up on the field. So now that rocks are gone, Infernape is here facing Excadrill in the sand where it's slower. But what do? You go Terra Fighting, you click Mach Punch, and one-shot it. And that one-shots every single time unless I'm Focus Sashed, which obviously I'm not. So that's it. And Excadrill goes down, which is my sweeping condition. So here's where we really have to like play back foot. And I think honestly, I've sold my whole team at this point, really. T-Tar or Excadrill is my main way to win. And with Diancie still alive, there's nothing that really takes it on. If I had a better Terra typing on Decidueye, it could, but nothing really takes it on, barring Crocalor getting in and being able to do something, and that's going to be really the hard part. So we do see its offensive Infernape. I am playing Rocky Helmet here to try to get some chip on Infernape. If it decides to stay in, we get a Hurricane off. Hopefully that works well. If it switches out, we get a Hurricane into something. I think it's probably just Diancie if I remember, but it does show Overheat, which is the special side. So mixed Infernape is kind of crazy. It goes hard, and I like the idea of it, especially for this team. I think Hammy built this really, really well. And also, I don't believe Mach Punch killed with out Terra Fighting. So the Roost was there to kind of scout what happened here. Again, we see a switch, so I'm just gonna get to max, which might be the problem. If at all, that might have been the turn to switch to Crocalor, but I'm just gonna sack it here, expecting something else. Now, Trick Room actually is really helpful for my slower things if I built negative speed, because as you can see, Diancie is 94, I'm 92, so if I go negative speed nature with negative speed, I do a lot. But I didn't even think about Diancie really this week. So Meteor Beam is just going to come out, Power Herb, gonna kill Crocalor regardless of what happens, and then it's +1 and faster than everything. So yeah, that's just GG. I don't think there's a way out of this. Besides potentially the Zapdos here doing something. I think I was trying to get a Para there as an out. And I decided that my best way to deal with this is to let Scyther go down and Trick Room end and try to get a Para, I believe. And that's what I was playing for. I didn't get it, unfortunately, but we were playing for it, and that's what I get for not dealing with Diancie. We were keeping Zapdos around because Zapdos does win a 1v1 situation versus Ogerpon, Infernape, and Ting-Lu. in the right situations. So I was trying to keep it around as long as I could, especially with Roost, so I could win that fight. If I got the right para, I could have parried this thing and 4-code it, but I didn't get a para at all, so RNG not on my side, and we take a loss, as well as our season to Hammy, who fought well and brought this team out of really low positioning to do some good. So we have now sold our team out of playoffs. Unfortunately, we weren't gonna make it in anyway at the point we were at. So we are sold out of playoffs. Hammy gets a win, so that's gonna put Hammy in the playoffs likely, and everyone above Hammy is probably gonna get in the playoffs. So it's down to the picture to see who else is gonna take a shot. So Gordon is up next, the Untitled Archon team versus Nightmare, which is the Phoenix Sunkerns, our number 1 team. So a fight that really doesn't matter on one half. On the other, it's kind of important. So it really depends on how you play. As long as you don't get 6-0'd, honestly, for Gordon's team, you're fine. Gordon has Garchomp, Spectrier, Sneasler, Rillaboom, or Azumarill. It's been the Azumarill team. Let's just call it the Azumarill team. You know what I'm talking about. And then King Kryptonite and the Phoenix Sunkerns are aptly the Rain team, which is hilarious to me. So what are you doing here? Well, if there's one thing I've learned from Gordon's team, it's Terra, Azumarill, Bally Drum, Aqua Jet, play rough, and take your pick on the final move. That is the set. So how do you stop that? Good question. And my answer, I don't know what it is, honestly. My answer is probably Swift Swim, Basculegion, forcing us to bring Rain, and I think Rain actually works really well for this team. And I like Rain a lot for this team, especially with big threats like Garchomp and Chi-Yu, and your Rain team having access to Hurricane, which will stop Sneasler and Rillaboom. Rain is huge this week, so I bring Pelipper, I bring Kilowattrel, I bring Basculegion. I full send the Rain team this week. I probably show our Chaludon as another option for Azumarill. And once you know it's Terra, because you can go Steel or Electric on the Archaludon, so knowing it's Terra, you can then choose which stab is better. I like that this week too. Otherwise, you need an option to deal with Azumarill, and I think a really cool, crafty one is Grafaiai. A cool way to shut it down is Trick Lagging Tail on Grafaiai with Prankster, and you can Lagging Tail the Azumarill to always move last in its priority brackets. And then if it belly drums, it's at half HP without the way to get the citrus up, and you can sit there and priority spam it to death. I like Shaman this week a lot, especially a Terra Shaman. If you predict the right Azumarill counter, it can be a great asset to this team. This would be the 1 week I would consider running Sap Sipper Azumarill, just because of Shaman. I would consider it really hard. If I'm gonna guess Azumarill's final move, it's gonna be Ice Punch to deal with Landorus, and Basculegion and Kilowattrel, and you're not forcing yourself into like Play Rough or one of the other moves. So I feel like that's going to be the option this week. And it also covers Shaman too. I don't think Fire works. I think Ice is just a better option for you this week to catch some of your things super effectively. But I would try Terra Shaman this week. I absolutely would. I'm surprised that we haven't seen Terra Shaman come out, honestly. So for me, it's the Rain squad, add Archaludon and Shaman, and then your final pick is kind of who do you want in your top tier? Is it more worthwhile to have Iron Valiant? Is it more worthwhile to have Landorus? I think Iron Valiant makes more sense this week just because that Garchomp is sitting there. You could run a booster energy set with speed to deal with Spectre and Sneasler. Lando also feels good. So I think you take one of those, whichever one you want to pick, and run it. For Gordon, I think you're going to try Azumarill again. Terra Azumarill will make sense. I don't know what else your team is going to be. I mean, standard, what we've seen is Garchomp, Sneasler, Rillaboom, and Azumarill. I definitely expect that again. For the rest of it, this could be the week I bring Ampharos here on the bottom with Thunder spam to try to deal with the water types. They're not going to cause problems. Again, if you're making on Azumarill sweeping, what's your answer to it? And that's a great question. I like Bronzong this week as well as a screen setter to try to shut down the Baskia Legion. I don't think it's going to be great in the Baskia Legion, but it could be something. Otherwise, you don't really have a good counter to Baskia Legion. So maybe a Choice Scarf Spectrier set comes out as well. Those are my thoughts on this. And again, I don't have a lot of team builders, so I can't really talk about what they brought until we look at it. So with Gordon, we are seeing the Ampharos this week. As I said, the Rain Core looks great, although we see none of the Rain Core on the team. Wow. No Pelipper, no Baskia Legion on the other side. We are seeing a Terra Fairy Azumarill sweep this week. That is, I'm calling it now. That is the only Terra Captain. Just kidding. The Weirdeer shows up. Terra Normal Weirdeer. Maybe they aren't taking this fight as seriously as I thought, but as you can say with Gordon's team, if you're playing Gordon in playoffs, Azumarill, Terra, that's good, best into your team offensively. Defensive Garchomp with pivoting options. Rillaboom and Sneasler that are going to run the Grassy Seed Unburdened set every week. You're going to see that. And then the other two slots are just best into your team with what's remaining. So I'm not sure what the lead is. It's probably Garchomp seeing 3 flying types, hoping that it has Stealth Rocks. I'm really confused as to why the screens aren't here, but I guess it works because you aren't seeing Baskia Legion. On the other side, we have Amandabuzz, Lando Eye, Grafai with probably the Lagging Tail set to try to shut down Azumarill, or some sort of set to shut down Azumarill. Honestly, a Flame Orb trick set could be also pretty funny because that would have the stats, and or if you have, I don't remember if Grafai gets any sort of ability, stat dropping move or anything like that. Maybe it gets Charm or something like that, but Burn Charm would be funny. Probably a Choice Band, Choice Scarf, Choice Spec, and or Life Orb Iron Valiant. I don't think the booster energy is really that worthwhile. I would expect Choice Scarf on the Kilowattrel with definitely Hurricane, praying you hit it to kill the Sneasler, and then a defensive Stealth Rocks lead Archaludon to kind of try to shut down the pivoting and the switching that is going to happen. So that's going to be my call. Garchomp versus Archaludon. It is Weirdeer versus Kilowattrel. So we're playing pivot game on I always forget what your actual name is now because it's different. On Kryptonite's side, we are seeing the pivot game. On Gordon's side, we're seeing what Weirdeer is going to do. So it is the Volt Switch pivot into Lando to take Calm Mind, Terra Weirdeer. Which that +1 doesn't even live, but it does have Landorus, which is huge. And we get the switch correctly called. Kryptonite's playing huge this week. And here is Terra Azumarill. It's not even gonna belly drum, but we do see that it is huge power this week. And it comes in and grabs a kill even without belly drum. So there's the Stealth Rocks as I was calling earlier. We're seeing the screens come out. It is Thunder Wave, a more defensive Thunder Wave Ampharos this week that is probably not as useful as you wanted it to be. We are seeing Weirdeer come in here to take the hits before we leave. We are showing the Terra Blast is available. It is neutral. You didn't want to Volt Switch there in case Garchomp came in. Now you want to Volt Switch on the Garchomp. We are Terra Dragon, Terra Blast. That is what you're calced for. And here is the setup from Azumarill with Belly Drum to sweep it. With Grafai coming in to do something. It is Air Balloon, which is an interesting set. Oh, it's Air Balloon Encore! To block the ground type stab. That will shut down the Azumarill. Great job. And then you P-Shot out to get momentum back into our Archaludon, who doesn't really care about being paralyzed right now. So, and there's Volt Switch proccing the Duraludon, getting the boost. Night Slash predicting a pivot. That is a defensive Archaludon who's just going to take the damage. It is meant to be sacked here. So you are predicting Earthquake again, but you did put yourself in range of Scale Shot. Now Garchomp's going to try to go offensive. He needs some way to set up and sweep. And there's an unfortunate Stone Edge miss. The reason it's Stone Edge, by the way, is Rock Slide doesn't KO from that range. 100% doesn't KO from that range. None of its stabs are hit from that range, but Rock Slide might. I think Rock Slide probably is like 50-50 at this percentage to KO. However, that miss was huge. There's Garchomp down. There's Azumarill down. King has figured out the strategy for Gordon, and Gordon showing that once you stop Belly Drum Azumarill, he's got no other aces up his sleeve, and he just folds. Mandibuzz is probably especially defensive, wanting to see scouting for a move. That is maybe a choice. We did see Thunder Wave and some pivoting, so that is probably just max offensive Ampharos there. The Terra Fairy comes in to try to deal with Mandibuzz, but Sleep Rest Talk is crazy. Is a crazy strat to shut this down. So here's Sneasler again, trying to set up. We did not see a switch of item. We are seeing Grafaiai is the answer to the setup sweepers. So Gordon is really struggling to find a way through that. If you're gonna double Dazzling Gleam, gets Ampharos its first kill of the season, I believe. And we are just gonna see Ampharos do some work here against this team. Not anticipating that Ampharos is going to pull 2 kills, let alone do all the work here. Here's the Speed Quark Drive to seal the game, because there's no way that Sneasler outspeeds. Although Moonblast is not enough to KO, which is crazy. Hold on. Grafaiai is going to win this game. That's crazy. CC does 90%. Does pop the balloon, but Acrobatics is there to deal with Sneasler in the back. And a funny BM way to win with Grafaiai taking that final kill for King Kryptonite against Gordon. I love that battle. It was a great battle. It looked really good. It didn't matter, and for it not mattering, it was still really fun. So good job, you guys, for putting on a show this week. That might matter for Gordon, who now finds himself at 4-4 at -2. Which, no, it's not going to matter, because that still puts him above Hammy and his record at... no, it doesn't. It puts him below Hammy, so he's looking at this battle with Clock. This huge battle of Clock, which is our last battle of the week. To see what happens there. I do want to say that I don't have the battle between Thread and Banzai this week, the Boston Celebes and the Chipotle Choodles. As I said, it's not a match that really matters. I don't know if something happened in the scheduling. I'm going to see if they actually fought or not. Because I don't feel like they did. And that might just be me. I don't feel like they fought. They might have not and just been like, hey, we'll both take a loss, or I'll take a loss, or like whatever. And just did it. But I did not see a matchup of them this week. So they did fight. I do have receipts that they fought on the 2nd, so, but I do not have a replay from them to show me that they did fight. So that is unfortunate, but I'm sure it was a great match, and I'll take a look at what that is for us, I guess. We'll take a look here. It was a 5-0 win from the Boston Celebes. So there you go. Which is a huge win. Banzai definitely wanting to put a statement. Then potentially, well, no. Putting a statement that he should be the number 2 team, even though that's not going to change anything. So great for them. I'm sure it was a good battle. I'm not sure what the matchup would have been. and I'm not worried about it. But we got Beans, the Cleveland Bears, Beans and the Cleveland Bears versus the Goodnight Cresselia, which is coached by Mate, and this is Mate's chance in. Considering that Hammy won his match, that means you are out. That means all of these teams are out. So we have the playoffs already. We have the playoffs already because the bottom 4 teams cannot get in. It rests solely on Hammy losing, and Hammy did not lose. So the top 8 are in playoffs. It's just what's the positioning for the battles this week. So let's take a look at that. I'm surprised because it all hinged on my battle, which I lost. So if I had won, these two actually mattered a bit more. So we'll see if that comes into play with their battles. This is Beans, Cleveland Bears versus Goodnight Cresselia and Mate, which we now know Mate has no chance of making playoffs, but we can still see what they would have done. This is the Dragapult team. You can't see the whole team, so it's Dragapult, Iron Treads, Susui and Samurott, Ogerpon, Cornerstone, Moltres, Terra Cresselia, Florges, Terra Raikou, Okidogi, Oranguru, and Dugong. And Beans is the Cleveland Bears right here on the edge, which is our Terrapagos and Masquerada Lando Kyurem team. I'm looking at this team and I'm not really sure what I do here. I think Terrapagos and Dragapult are staples to come in to do some work this week. You are probably building a defensive Terrapagos to try to counter Iron Treads. But you don't want to be too defensive because you want to be able to stuff Dragapult, which is probably a Dragon Darts set this week. I expect Meowscarada as potentially one of the best ways to counter Dragapult on the team. Actually, Meowscarada is a stupid good matchup this week. Goes into Treads, Samurott, and Ogerpon Cornerstone really, really well. Only really doesn't like Moltres, and that's kind of crazy. There's no ice type on this team. I guess it doesn't really like Cresselia and Florges either, but that's in Oranguru. I guess it likes Oranguru, never mind. But it's just interesting to me that it has such a good matchup. So I expect Meowscarada Terrapagos. As for everything else, I'm not sure what you do. Kyurem is okay. It's not a great matchup. Honestly, I think I leave it at home this week. And I think I bring Lando T. The Intimidate spam is crazy for the top 4. It can shut down right kinds of Dragapults. It will shut down Treads, Samurott, and Ogerpon in the right ways. It's good for Okidogi in the back, although Guard Dog is kind of crazy. So a standard defensive Lando set with good stab and U-turn is going to be great for this team this week. I kind of like the Galarian Weezing. Just as a defensive option, because again, you're not probably bringing Oranguru. Cresselia is probably not going to be Fairy type if it comes. So, I mean, Psychic type if it comes. So, you're probably okay to run it. And that gets rid of abilities too. I don't know if you want to bring a Levitate set. You probably bring the Levitate set if you're bringing it versus Treads. That would be my guess. Although I don't like the matchup from Treads. Yeah, I don't like that at all. I don't know. I don't know. Lando, Meowscarada, Terrapagos definitely are coming. Necrozma has an okay matchup this week. Again, it'd be a non-stab matchup, but tomatoes, potatoes. What else has a good matchup? Lucario feels great this week. Terra Lucario. I've been talking about that, I think, for a couple weeks now. Kind of sad that it hasn't been brought a lot, but Terra Lucario looks good, especially into... This team has a massive grass and fighting weakness, and I think you take advantage of that here. The other thing I like this week, and I say it a lot, is Kricketune. And you're like, Chaos, quit talking about Kricketune. But what Kricketune does is it forces Treads to be boots, Instead of Assault Vest, instead of Life Orb, instead of Chopple Berry or Aka Berry or whatever you want to call it, you force it to be boots, you force it to spin, and then you get a free switch into something else, like Hisui and Typhlosion, that will want to come in and just bop it. So I like the idea of Sticky Webs, Kricketune, make your other bottom two Lucario and Typhlosion, take your Terra as you need it. Probably run Terra Ghost Typhlosion just to stuff Iron Treads. Or you bring another like Terra Dark to deal with Dragapult. That's up to you. But I like that. Terrapagos, Meowscarada, Lando T, Lucario, Typhlosion, and Kricketune with webs. Again, you have to lead webs Kricketune for it to be worthwhile. That is the hard part, but that's me. If you're not bringing Kricketune, I like the same core. I just like for Alligator as your final option this week instead. And if I mate, I'm bringing the Dragapult to try to outspeed the Meowscarada. As I said, I love Dragon Darts into Terrapagos. I think that a good offensive set could work there. It's also a great way for like sub, if you want to be like sub Kyurem, sub Necrozma. I think Dragon Darts works. So Infiltrator set, it feels great to me. I could see mixed, but Shadow Claw actually works pretty well. You need a probably mixed for like Flamethrower to catch Lucario and Meowscarada, but other than that, I think Dragapult mixed Disruptor set could be crazy. Iron Treads is forced to come with the threat of Stealth Rocks, with the threat of webs, which could ruin strategies. That's forced, so it's forced to be a spinner this week, probably with Air Balloon. Hisui and Samurott has a good chance of being brought specifically to shut down Terrapagos. We will probably see a Boots Terrapagos just to stop all of the hazards on this side too. So hazards could really matter in this battle. I like Samurott as an option to do that as well. Ogerpon is okay this week. Fortunately, Grass and Rock is a weird typing without Storm Drain, and I don't really like it this week. So I'm bringing the top three. I might go Moltres to try to stop Meowscarada. It's also good for Kyurem to an extent, Lucario to an extent, Kricketune if it's there. And lead Moltres is really solid this week, honestly. So I would take Moltres, bring it this week. I like Okidogi to shut down Landorus. You would have to build it super defensive to take the hit after the Intimidate Guard Dog block, but other than that, it could do some work. But I tell you what I really like. I like Terra Raikou Calm Mindset this week. I believe it gets Aura Sphere, which is a way to counter Terrapagos, Meowscarada, Kyurem. And you can run your different Terra, like Terra Steel, to counter all three of them too. So I like that this week. I think that's what I'm bringing if I'm either of these teams. But let's see what we get. We get Beans with Kyurem, the Weezing, Lando T, Terra Ghost, Typhlosion, which we talked about is a rapid spin counter, Terrapagos, and Feraligatr. I don't hate the team. I'm a little surprised that we are not seeing the Meowscarada, because I think it has a great match this week. Specifically looking at this team, Meowscarada beats 5 of the 6 Mons. That is a big misplay there, I think, by Beans. It's just oppressive this week. It really is just oppressive this week. And I think you bring it over something like Weezing, over maybe Feraligatr. But on mate's side, we see the Dragapult. Obviously, we see Treads, which is going to be a Boots Spinner with Terra Fairy, if it gets Terra. It does get Terra. Terra Fairy on the Cresselia, so that was going to be an answer to Meowscarada there. And then Hydreigon. That's not Hydreigon. That is Hisui and Samurott. Terra Water Okidogi, and Terra Steel Dugong. Something is wrong with this. There's not that many Terras on this team. All 3 Terra captains are brought: Dugong, Raikou, and Cresselia. Potentially there was a misplay to bring Terra Water Okidogi. But yeah, the only Terras that we have to worry about, actually 2 of the Terras were brought And also with the iron treads as well. It's not can't Terra nor can the Ogie Dogie. So just Terra Steel, Dugong, and Terra Fairy Cresselia, which are the problems. If we're looking lead options, it could be offensive lead start, which I would imagine means we are gonna see potentially an offensive. We're probably gonna see Dragapult Lando. And Dragapult is like a Will-O-Wisp counter to Lando to shut it down a bit. And also pivoting, but Dragapult being faster than everything means it can freely switch out if it wants to. On Bean's side, I do think the Lando makes sense. Otherwise, it's Weezing to set up Toxic Spikes. I think that's your options here. It is Lando and it is Dugong, actually. I'm not sure if this is a Whirlpool set, but we are scouting for U-Turn. We do see U-Turn. We're going to let that come out now, and this is probably a Perish Trap set. If I had to imagine there was a set for Dugong, it's Perish Trap. This does force the Sweep Tyranitar to switch... Sweep for Alligator to switch out, and Dugong is just going to sit in here and do some work. We are going to see Terra Ghost, so not opting for the Terra on the other Pokemon. But Dugong is just sitting here. It is not going to switch. It's going to cause problems. We're going to see Terrapagos come in, which could be really bad, but they are predicting the free switch, and we're going to see it right again. This is Levitate Weezing to counter the Iron Treads. We are just going to see a bunch of switching happening until somebody gets what they want. Thunder Wave is massive into Terrapagos because you get it right away, and that is BM. This Terrapagos is now pretty useless, unless it's a Rapid Spin set specifically. But even then, it's crazy. That is nuts. That is a nuts play. Hold on. First, the tech to bring Toxic to Toxic Cresselia, because you know that's a really good way to deal with it. And then switching to Ogie Dogie, which is your poison type, on this switch to take advantage of it. Wow. What a play by Mate to make not a prediction, but just something like that. I'm not sure Beans was aware Guard Dog does what it does, but Knockoff was a safe play. It was trying to find a way to beat Lando. I'm probably just Ice Punch there, trying to make that prediction. I mean, Knockoff is the correct play because you could easily go into anything else, but Lando specifically was a good option. So I probably would have Ice Punched there just to try to play to predict, and you would have been at Ogie Dogie with full health at +1. Which is crazy. Instead, Typhlosion comes in to do some work. We are expecting the Terra Ghost Shadow Ball, which does a lot of damage. And here's Ceaseless Edge to finally get some hazards on the field. There's not a lot of ways to get rid of it. There is Defog. That is your answer for hazards. And Heavy Slam is not going to KO Weezing, but you are going to get burned for your troubles. So again, that is probably Heavy Duty Boots treads on that side. Here is Rocks predicting the switch because you see Heavy Slams doing the work. And now if you're Beans, you are setting up that for Alligator with Swords Dance, not Dragon Dance, just Swords Dance. And there's Thunder Wave showing you it's a bad idea, but it misses at a critical moment. So now it doesn't matter for Alligator, just takes 2 kills, 3 kills, 4 kills. Not 4 kills, 4 kills, 5 kills. Ceaseless Edge misses, that's crazy. Mate having some bad luck. 5 kills, doesn't get the 6. Does Dragapult have something to answer it? It does not. It gets Dragapult just sweep. 2 SD for Alligator just sweep this week. That is crazy. What a match. What a great use of running Swords Dance over Dragon Dance and not worrying about it at all. Was that Beans that won? Yes. That it was Beans that won that fight. A great way for Beans to secure the 4 spot. It was Beans versus the Goodnight Cresselia and Mate's team that just gets even more pushed out of playoffs, which is crazy. All right, and now we're down to our last medal of the week, which again doesn't really matter It had good potential to matter, but with Hammy winning, its playoffs are done, and that is what it is. So there's no big like hoop-de-doo this week, but it is Clock versus Dom, and we'll see what goes on here. Dom is the Urshifu single strike team with the Skarmory that put in some work a couple weeks ago with Terra, with a bunch of Terras there, and Clock is over here with this team in the bottom left. And the bottom below that is the Sandy Shocks and the Terra Lapras. I don't think we've really seen Sandy Shocks this week, this season, honestly. It's a little sad when you think about it, but it's not the best Pokemon in the world, and it's got a very niche set. So if I'm looking at the team, this is Darkrai versus Urshifu, and I'm bringing Urshifu every single time. I'm probably leaving Darkrai at home. That sounds crazy this week, but this is not Darkrai's matchup. This is Dragonite's game to win, I think. Specifically against Urshifu, I think Dragonite is your best answer. Because Rabambi and Ticketung are not going to do anything. Chandelure is not going to do anything. Dragalge has a shot at doing something, but not really. A Terra Lapras could be phenomenal. So find a way to beat Urshifu, but I don't think Clock has a good one. I really don't think Clock has a good one. I think the ideal is probably Sticky Web, Rabambi with Terra Lapras to try to deal with Urshifu, but then you are forced with Chandelure to try to deal with Skarmory and Goodra as well. Maybe we're playing that Meloetta to try to deal with Urshifu in case things go wrong. There was a Meloetta, right? Nope. I'm looking at the other team. I'm telling Clock to bring his opponent, bring Dom's Mon, not the other way around. Crazy. But yeah, I don't see a good way to beat Urshifu, and if I'm just throwing stuff out there, it's gonna be Sticky Web to try to shut that down, and then build a lot of things that are faster than to try to deal with it. So Dragonite probably. You might try Darkrai with like I don't know if Darkrai gets a fairy move, but you might try Darkrai with a fairy move. Great Tusk definitely is it. An offensive Great Tusk could go crazy this week. Absolutely could go crazy this week. Booster Speed could even shut down Cinderace. I like Booster Speed. Great Tusk. I think Dragonite's big. I think Rabambi with setup there. I think Chandelure has to come. And I think you're trying to find something to deal with Urshifu, and that probably is Terra Lapras. So that would be the 6 I would expect. And on the other side for Dom, Urshifu is massive this week. It has to come. No ifs, ands, ors, or buts. I think you bring Tornadus as an option for Great Tusk, as an option for a pivoting Pokemon this week. It feels really good. Otherwise, this could be Sceptile's week to try to deal with Ogerpon. I think Cinderace has to show up. You don't have another... I think Sceptile deals with Ogerpon. I also think Wash deals with Ogerpon. So maybe Urshifu, Tornadus, Rotom Wash, Cinderace, Sceptile, and then take your pick on the final slot. We did see the D-Dance Crawdaunt do well last time, but I feel like you need a more defensive option, and I feel like one of your best defensive options this week is Skarmory. So I'm bringing Skarmory or Goodra. So I think I bring Urshifu, Tornadus, Rotom Wash, Skarmory, Sceptile, and Cinderace, and that's going to be what we see. Otherwise, let's take a look at what we are going to see from these teams. This is Clock's team. This is versus Clock. So this is Dom's. Oh, sorry, that's the match. This is Dom's team builder. This is Clock's team builder. So we are seeing the Sandy Shocks Choice Scarf coming this week with Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, Earth Power, Electric Terrain. Each terrain is set up. What? I don't know what this Sandy Shock set is. Electric Terrain? For what purpose? It doesn't boost any of your team? I think it only helps his opponent. That's a weird Sandy Shock set, but very offensive, and I can stand that. The Ogerpon is coming as well. A very, very defensive Ogerpon. Almost max HP with 100 in attack, almost 200 in speed. So almost HP speed invested. Water Absorb, which is what it's going to have. And then Ivy Cudgel, Low Kick, Trailblaze, and Knockoff. Meant to be speed boosting with Trailblaze. Potentially a way to deal with the Urshifu here with low Kick and Trailblaze. We have Bean Sprouts, Artera Dragology, which is Terra Poison this week. Rocky Helmet as a not even as a physical wall, just max HP, max special. Rest T Spikes, no way to get out of Rest, so Rest is kind of bad. I like Rest, but the problem with Rest is it forces another move. And or it forces your item. So we don't see another item. We don't see Sleep Talk. We don't see Lumberry or Chesto Berry, which is my preferred berry if you're doing this strat, because it doesn't get procced by like Burn or something. So that's an interesting Dragology. I don't like it. I want to see what it does, I'll be honest. Mr. Business, Great Tusk, max HP, max attack, meant to be a bulky wall breaker, not a offensive sweeper. I do think a speed photosynthesis set could go crazy, but I understand the defensive set with bulk up and rapid spin to get those boosts anyway. And then we have Sunny Day as a tech move in the back to try to proc the HP, the attack stat. Actually, that's crazy. Chandelure weakness policy is kind of sick. It is a more physically defensive weakness policy. I'm sure that is meant to beat, to take an Urshifu Wicked Blow. That would be my guess. Set up, use Flame Charge to outspeed, and then you are Flamethrower, Shadow Ball through the rest of the team. And then it is the Terra Electric Lapras at the bottom with D-Dance, Terra Blast, Icicle Spear, and Protect. A similar set to a match we saw a couple weeks ago, but very interesting to say the least. These teams feel very off kilter to me, but the Clocks team feels very off kilter to me. But again, who knows if he thought if he was out, if he knew he was out at this point in time, it was just memeing or what. But definitely not the 6 I would bring if I'm trying to play this game, in my opinion. But Clock's a good battler. He might have an idea. On Dom's side, we see Pheasant Dippity, meant to get hacks. Likely in Pivot. We have the Pivot Regenerator Tornadus. I am dying because there's no Urshifu. Urshifu was so good this week, and there's not even there, so dang. Maybe Dom's not playing seriously with no Urshifu. I mean, the team still is pretty good. So we have Atera fighting Meloetta to deal with some work. I think the first week Sand Slash has been brought because Sand Slash is just bad. Gudra, and then probably a switching hazard stacking or utility rather, Rotom Wash. If I'm this team, I'm probably leading the Rotom just to see what comes out. I would expect that the Facade, if you're facading this Clock, you're going to lead the Sandy Shocks. If you don't care about the Facade, I have no idea what your lead is. What looks good into this team is Ogerpon outside of the Tornadus. So we'll see what happens there. It is Ogerpon and it is Tornadus. So you're going to see immediate switch in a U-turn. It's not a U-turn, it's an Air Slash. We're going to go for straight damage. Knockoff's going to get rid of Rocky Helmet frame 1. So I'm not even sure what this was supposed to do, but it's not going to do it at all. Sand Slash coming in to take the Volt Switch pivot. That's a pretty good idea. Maybe that's why it's here. An EQ meant to do the business to Mr. Business, who can freely set up right now. Unfortunately, you are going to lose your item there. And I don't know if you came up with a way to deal with Rotom. You did not. You did not come up with a way to deal with offensive Rotom, and now your Great Tusk is donezo. So I don't know what your answer is. I mean, it's still doing a lot of damage. That's just how powerful Great Tusk is. But let's switch out to a basically useless Dragology at this point to get pivoting, and then the Gudra is going to come in. So here's the thing. The rest takes 2 turns, but is it just going to be a switch out? Meant to be a sack later. We see Draco dropped for a pivot, and then we're going to see Electric Terrain, which confuses Dom as much as it confuses me, which is crazy. Rapid Spin is your way to get rid of hazards here, but you're expecting a water move. Assault Vest is great. The low kick, actually great to deal with Goodra. I did not encounter that. And Ogerpon's doing the work. Again, this Dragalge is here just to take hits, and unfortunately, it taking hits is going to cause problems. So there is the switch to Pirouette form as D-Dance Lapras comes off, obviously showing off its bulk. Protect to block CC, or to scout forward at least. This will be Terra here. That still does 55%, and you got to hope that your Terra, your move, either you've set up enough to outspeed or your move KOs. Again, you're going to protect the CCC in case the switch happened. But there's no pivoting for Dom. He's just straight up doing damage. Weakness policy procs on knockoff though. And unfortunately you click Acid Armor instead of a setup move. Flame Body is gonna get though, and that'll be the end finally of Meloetta. We took with it almost 3 lives. Unfortunately, we're gonna see Willows come out, the protection for the pivot, and or the Willow, probably trying to catch Willow, and this is meant to catch the pivot. Now Dom is predicting, but unfortunately the miss is huge there. And the water absorb pivot. Wow, the predictions here were clocked to get back into a fighting position. And the luck to get into a fighting position is crazy. The burn comes out, which is a safe play. And knockoff doesn't even KO anymore, which is crazy. Unfortunately, we're going to just see knockoff come out to deal with items. So a lot of items are knocked off. And here's where Lapras tries to set up once again. Being Terra Electric is going to make it weak to the Sand Slash though, and it's probably going to just have to switch or die. It takes the death option. So what is Sandy Shocks going to do? Feed into the Levitate switch. Wow, that's crazy. And then we're just going to see this Rotom that shouldn't even be alive right now do some work. As Dragalge is taking a snooze. Doesn't even try to go for like Rapid Spin setup, just straight up KOs it. And unfortunately, like, there's not a lot that Great Tusk can do here. I believe that will let it live a hit here. But I don't think it matters going forward. Yeah, that is a defensive Sand Slash that is able to take a hit. And there is nothing you can do here because you switch to Wash. Scout for the move. You know it is locked. And then Sand Slash gets the KO because you can't do anything there. So Clock takes a 4-0 loss. Doesn't even matter if it was legit or not because it is going to be the season. It's going to be curtains for Clock, unfortunately. Who just, again, gets some bad luck. Gets some good luck, actually, in that fight, but it's not enough. So we do have some position changes, which is actually important for placings and seedings. Of course, our Phoenix Sunkern, who only took a loss to Thread this season with 26 differential, which is ridiculous, is at 7-1. The Choodles go to 6-2, losing to Banzai, who increases to above 50%. Beans also takes a win over 50%. Dom also takes a win over 50%. Like, these teams got mad that I said they were out and played like crazy this week to make sure they were in. Wayscar takes a loss to drop to 4-4 at 0 diff. Gordon loses though, which drops to 4-4 with -2 diff. Hammy gets a win with 4-4 at 1 diff. And then the rest of us don't really matter because we all lost. It's like none of the bottom teams had a shot to get in. The team that won on the bottom that mattered. The team on the bottom that won. Let me actually back that up. It was 3-4, so it is 3-5. The team on the bottom that needed to win did not. So any of the top 3. But Scal does not get a season where he loses, so that's where he loses every battle, which is good for the morale if you're playing that way. So we are going to see some jumps in the polls here at the top, and that'll do number for positioning. But we'll cover that in a minute once we go over the teams that are out. So that is where we're at. It's funny that the top and bottom team both had the same differential. Unfortunately, none of the bottom 4 positions changed. So if you're the Torrent, Cresselia, the Wingles, or the Oshawotts, you are all gone. To be fair, Clocked is the only one who had a chance, and I sold that for him by letting Hammy win. So sorry, my bad. Realize it's my fault. I 100% realize it's my fault that everyone got out. But y'all lost anyway, so I don't feel that bad about it. We do have some switches though with the polls, which Hammy gets better seating because of the win. So that this week's battles did matter a little bit, not a whole lot. It did shift up who plays who at this point. So again, the win number was 4 this season. You need to go above 50%, and that didn't do anything crazy. So we're gonna have 1v8, 2v7, 3v6, and 4v5. So that puts our almost undefeated King Kryptonite with the Phoenix Sun Kerns against Gordon and the Untitled Archon team, which just fought in week 8. So we're gonna have a rematch for the first week of playoffs next week, which is kind of crazy to me. We have Thread and the Chipotle Choodles against the Golden Glaceons, coached by Waskar, which I think also they played this week. They played not this week. They played recently. The Chipotle Choodle versus Golden Glaceons. Yes, that was a week 5 match. So it was a week 5 rematch. Where if we look at the actual standings, not the actual standings, the actual schedule board. I don't want to show you all the stuff. If we look at the actual standings board, that was a win by the Choodles 1-0. So a very close match that I'm sure Waskar would like to be on the other side of this week. In the other spots, 3v6 is the Richmond Rulabooms versus Banzai and the Boston Celebies. I don't think these guys played. Because week 6 would have been where Hammy picked up. So this is going to be a new fight for Hammy and Banzai this week. So we'll get a completely different matchup there. I'm honestly not sure if they've ever played each other, but we'll see. Then Dom and Beans take the final match as the Bewares versus the Primarinas. And I'm not sure. They fought in week 7, so another rematch that was really, really soon. Most of the teams have played each other. The only real new one is the 6v3 battle, so that is the match to watch this week. I'm gonna mark it differently, so next time we know. That is the match to watch this week, because those are the teams that haven't played each other. Everyone else has played everybody. Has played their opponent, so we kind of know what to expect from this battle. We said this was a 1. So you won week 6. I'm just gonna do some. We lost week 6. Gordon lost week 8. You won week 8. The Bewares and the Primarinas played in week 5, right? No, they played in week 7. And who won that battle? Let's look. The Primarinas won in week 7. So the only non-upset would be 5 beating 4, because 5 already beat 4 this season. So that, if we're looking at who's won already, we are taking 1, 2, and 3, and we're taking 5. So 4, 6, and 7 are probably going to be out if we're playing based on what happened earlier in the season. Now, again, a lot of these were like 1-0 losses, so some changes could happen to get some unexpected plays. But if we're hedging our bets, we're picking the 1 seed, the 2 seed, the 3 seed, and the 5 seed this week to win. But again, you can't count out any of those lower seeds. They all earned their spot in the playoffs. Even if it wasn't a differential, that was great for them, but they did win their way in. So they're here. Honestly, I'm not sure if Hammy's lost this season, to be fair. Let's see if Hammy lost this season. Sorry. Hammy won week 8, obviously. Hammy won week 7. And Hammy won week 6. So Hammy hasn't lost this season, which means this is really going to be a matchup, because Banzai's put up great fights to beat even Thread, a seed higher than him. This is going to be a major matchup this week, this coming week. So this is for quarterfinals. So enjoy your quarterfinals matchups. Phoenix Sunkern versus the Untitled Archon team. Chipotle Choodles versus the Golden Glaceons. Boston Celebi versus the undefeated Richmond Rillabooms. And the Cleveland Bewares versus the pristine Primarinas. Let's see if Hammy can stay on his undefeated streak. Hammy is a great battler, so I'm not surprised by that. And if you're going to pick a low seed to win a high seed match, I might say pick Hammy. But we can have a very interesting playoff season and a very interesting series in general. So that'll do it for us today. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. I'll leave the VOD up. Thank you for watching the VOD, and thank you guys for letting me do this. I will see you all in a little bit. So stay safe out there, and as always,